What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you want to support me, you can now support me on Patreon. It's my way to give back to you, and it'll let you have a voice on what deck techs you'd like to see from me. Another thing you can do is use that TCGplayer in the description down below, or as always, just liking, commenting, and subscribing will do the trick. Now, let's get into today's deck tech with Omarthis, and the plan is pretty simple, guys. We're gonna buff this guy to the moon, we're gonna sacrifice him and manifest as much cards as humanly possible. Then we have a lot of ways in the deck to abuse those manifested cards, whether it be buffing them up, blinking them to turn them face up, or giving our whole board persist, sacrificing our whole board, and turning all of those creatures face up. There's a lot of fun ways to abuse this guy, and a lot of fun ways just to abuse colorless in general. Moon Silver Key, it honestly turns out to be one of the best cards in the deck, tutoring 90% of the cards that we really want, such as Forsaken Monument or Staff of Completion. Staff of Completion, another overperformer I found in the deck. It sacrifices or kills our commander, it goes ahead and gives us mana, it can draw cards, it can proliferate, which is also busted. Turns out it just does everything we need it to, and it's amazing in the deck for that. So one more thing, we did include World Slayer, and the reason we did is, like, say we get Omarthis pretty massive, then we swing in with World Slayer, everybody has to sacrifice everything, including lands, kind of messed up, but then we will manifest the top cards of our library, and we will have a board state and no one else will have anything. So if that sounds like a deck tech you'd like to get into, let's get into it. First things first, we need to buff up our commander, so let's talk about how we can do that. Scrapyard Recombiner. This guy's insane in the deck. We run a ton of constructs in the deck, and this guy can search all of the important ones up, and we can start making our commander massive. Notably, Walking Ballista and Hangerback Walker are both constructs, and these are really good for buffing our commander up. Hangerback Walker is way faster than Walking Ballista, but then again, Walking Ballista is just way more useful. Another thing I like to do with Hangerback Walker is buff him up, and then you can sacrifice him to our Scrapyard Recombiner, and then we have a lot of artifacts to start sacrificing to search up more constructs, because there's a lot more. Patchwork Automaton, this guy comes down early and starts buffing our commander up really fast. 90% of the deck is artifacts, and this guy's just going to make our commander massive. Steel Overseer. This one's amazing because it will get a counter on our commander for each counter we put on artifacts. So in a scenario where we have 5 artifacts on the board, we tap this guy down and we just put 5 counters on our commander. This is one of the best ways to buff our commander up, especially once we pop that Hangerback Walker, or maybe we have a Mere Battlesphere on the battlefield. Crystalline Crawler, this one's amazing because it can also be used as mana, so not only are we buffing our commander up, we're just getting mana out of it. Iron Apprentice, now this one serves a pretty good purpose in the deck because we're going to use our modular ability to put all of our counters on the Iron Apprentice, and then we're going to kill the Iron Apprentice to put all of our counters on our commander. Arcbound Ravager, he's just going to come down, sacrifice all the artifacts, put all the counters on himself, and then in a perfect world we use something like Liquid Metal Torque, Iron Apprentice, or the Ozolith to throw all of those counters on our commander. Scavenged Brawler. This guy can do some pretty insane things in the deck. Yes, we do have to jump through a little bit of hoops to get him in our graveyard, but once he's there, we can just throw 8 counters on our commander. Ability counters will also trigger our commander's manifest ability. So now we've got a Vigilance, Flying, Trample, and Lifelinker that just gets bigger and bigger. Our opponents will be left with 2 choices. Let me keep hitting you in the face with this giant commander, or kill him and let me manifest the top cards of my library. Arcbound Crusher is going to be pretty solid because, again, we have a lot of artifacts in the deck, and the fact that this card has modular just makes it that much better. Drillworks Mole. This guy's just super solid. For 2 mana, we're going to put 2 counters on our commander. We'll get 1 from putting a counter on the Drillworks Mole, and then, we just get to put 1 on our commander with the Drillworks Mole ability. The Ozolith. It's no surprise this card is here. All we have to do is keep killing our stuff, keep putting counters on it, and keep putting those counters on our commander. And then when we finally sacrifice our commander to manifest all those cards, it's going to be pretty easy just to recast our commander and put all of those counters back on him. Sword of Truth and Justice. This card is too good not to include. It's going to let us put a counter on our commander, and then it's going to let us proliferate. Notably, whenever we proliferate, we are putting additional counters on all of our creatures. So we're not only going to get a proliferation trigger, we're also going to trigger our commander for each other creature we proliferate, which is pretty busted. Contagion Engine. I've had this card just wipe boards in the deck, and then additionally, it's just going to make our commander and our board massive. Let's move on to some of the cards we want to cheat into play using our commander's manifest ability. Blightseek Colossus. This is going to be super solid. All we have to do is blink this guy, and then instead of getting a 2/2, boom, we've gotten an 11/11 trample, infect, indestructible creature that is coming at someone's face. Cityscape Leveler. Not only will this remove something when we blink it, but then it's just going to be a threat that keeps attacking and keeps removing our opponent's key pieces. Portal to Phyrexia. This guy kind of serves two purposes in the deck. One, if we sacrifice our manifested creatures, like say we sacrifice a Blightsteel, then we can get it back to the battlefield with our Portal to Phyrexia. So it not only can reanimate our big stuff, but it can also just be cheated into play with our manifest ability. Graz the Unstoppable. This is this deck's Craterhoof Behemoth. It's 1-me games. Honestly, turning those 2/2 manifested creatures into 5/3s is a huge difference, and it will take people out. Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Not only is this a one-sided board wipe, we can cheat it into play. You have to love that. Mere Battlesphere. Another card that can just go wide in the deck while being a giant beater. Steel Hellkite. When you don't have access to a lot of removal, this guy seems like a god in the deck. It will just hose over token strategies, and honestly, if you have enough mana to pump into it, it can get rid of any threat you need to get rid of. Wormcoil Engine. In a deck where you're sacrificing artifacts over and over again and bringing them back for value, this guy is an all-star in the deck. He's going to gain you a lot of life, he's going to go super wide, and if you get that Graz on the battlefield, they're going to be buffed to the moon, and you can take people out pretty easily. Ugin the Ineffable. This is going to be amazing, lowering all the cost of those colorless spells. It also has an option to remove things and manifest the top card of your library, so it's checking all of the boxes. Wandering Archaic. This is amazing because we don't have access to ramp spells, we don't have access to that reliable card draw. This is a colorless deck, so being able to steal that from everybody else is going to be amazing. One thing that this doesn't do, it doesn't tax our opponents. Kind of, it just lets us double it if they don't pay. So they're not going to look at it as a bad effect until you know it's too late. Now, we've buffed our commander up, we've manifested a lot of cards, how are we going to flip them over? Golden Argosy. A cool thing about vehicles is you can overcrew them, so just tap every creature you want to be turned upright, and then boom, Argosy will go ahead and exile them, bring them back onto the battlefield face up, and you've just cheated in a Blightsteel Colossus. Cauldron of Souls. This one works very similarly, but we will have to have a sack outlet. All we do is give all of our creatures persist, and then it doesn't care if it's a creature or not, it will still return it to the battlefield. So for instance, if we have Portal to Phyrexia turned face down as a manifest creature, we give that manifest creature persist, and then we sacrifice it, it will come back face up as the Portal to Phyrexia. So that's a pretty cool and busted interaction I had no idea about before building this deck. Conjurer's Closet. This one is a bit slower than the other two, but still extremely effective. It also kind of serves two purposes in the deck, right? To flip over our manifested creatures, and then we do have a lot of ETB effects that either remove stuff, ramp us, or, you know, do other things. So it's pretty good to have that in our back pocket just in case we need it. Sword of Hearth and Home. Not only will this ramp us, this is also just going to be a solid way to flip those manifested cards up. Another thing about this card is, remember, the blink option is a May, so you will have the opportunity to just attack and get your land and not have to blink your commander if it's the only thing on the battlefield. Ugin's Mastery. This card has an amazing ceiling in the deck. Now we not only get to manifest the top card of our library whenever we cast a colorless spell, we also have the option to flip those up as long as we have big enough creatures. A cool thing about that is we run big creatures in the deck, so as soon as we flip a couple up, we'll just start flipping more and more and more. Erratic Portal. Now, this one serves a little bit of a different purpose. We're not trying to cheat anything into play, we're just trying to get stuff that we want back to our hands, right? If you try to flip over a 0/0 creature, it's just going to instantly die and go into the graveyard. So being able to return those to our hand and then recast them to be impactful is going to be amazing. It'll also just let us bring our lands back, our artifacts back, anything that we can't flip up, because you can only flip up a manifested creature by paying its mana cost. Moving on, let's talk about how busted Moonsilver Key is in this deck. It's literally 1-me games. The first thing it's going to grab is Staff of Completion. This does everything we need, from sacrificing our commander to giving us mana to even proliferating and drawing cards. It's absolutely insane in the deck. It can even grab Liquid Metal Torque. If we have a massive modular creature but don't have a way to put those counters onto our commander, we can just grab Liquid Metal Torque, turn our commander into an artifact, sacrifice that giant modular creature, and then boom, throw all the counters onto our commander. Forsaken Monument is another amazing thing to grab with this. 9 times out of 10, I'm probably grabbing this if I already have Staff of Completion or a way to reliably kill my commander. This is going to make our manifested creatures 4/4s, it's going to give us double mana, and it's going to start gaining us life. That life gain is a lot more useful than you think it is. It can also search up Karn Legacy Reforged. Hey, it's an artifact and it's got a mana ability, and this guy can generate a ton of mana, and then again 90% of the deck is artifacts, so we have a good place to put that mana. Crystalline Crawler is another thing we can search up with this. It's probably on the lower side of the list, but hey, early game, if we want to start buffing our commander up and we need some mana, it is going to be a solid option if we already have a way to reliably sack him. We can also grab Ashnod's Altar. If we've already manifested a lot of creatures and have a lot of things we need to sacrifice, Ashnod's Altar is going to be a perfect thing to grab with that. And last but not least, we have Soul Ring. Let's talk about the core of the deck. We have Manifold Key. There's a lot of artifacts in this deck that tap for mana, tap for putting counters on themselves, and then making our commander unblockable is actually going to be pretty useful because we can get him to over 21 power and just one-shot people. Even getting him to like 11 power and then putting them on a 2-turn clock is going to be pretty impactful as well. Spawning Pit's going to be amazing. Not only can it add to our colorless army, it can also be a solid sacrifice outlet. Scroll Rack is going to be amazing in the deck. I mean, picture you just have a Blightsteel in your hand and a commander ready to sacrifice. That's a problem, right? So now we can put Blightsteel on top of our library and make sure we manifest it. We do have an infinite combo, but it is by complete accident. Sensei's Divining Top, Foundry Inspector, and Mystic Forge. All very good cards in the deck, but together it makes it to where you can cast the top for free off top of your library and draw your entire deck. Now, we have no way to win off of that, so don't go infinite and do that, but there is that option. Also, Ugin the Ineffable can stand in for the Foundry Inspector in this infinite combo. Scrap Trawler is just going to be super solid to bring those artifacts back from our graveyard to our hand. Mirror Retriever also does an amazing job of this. It's also another infinite combo that does nothing in the deck. I suppose if you really wanted to justify it, we could say we had Ashnod's Altar, Scrap Trawler, Mirror Retriever, and Foundry Inspector all on the battlefield at the same time, and then we can just sack them infinitely. The payoff would have to be something like a Patchwork Automaton or an Arcbound Crusher to generate infinite power. We also do have the Spawning Pit that can just create infinite tokens, but again, we passed Magical Christmas Land a long time ago. Scarecrow, this can literally just bring your biggest, baddest creatures from your graveyard straight to the battlefield. Dragon Throne of Tarkir. This is a very, very slow Craterhoof, but a very, very slow Craterhoof in a colorless deck turns out to just be very, very good. I mean, in all honesty, hey, the Craterhoof cost 8 mana, this costs 9 mana, but we already have big creatures in the deck, so it's not that hard to get off, especially once we've manifested a lot of those little 2/2s and we just turn them into 5/5s out of nowhere. Meteor Golem, this is an amazing ETB that we can abuse, as well as just being solid removal in a colorless deck. All is Dust is a one-sided board wipe that does a one-sided board wipe things. And then we have the World Slayer. Like I said, this is amazing if we get our commander massive, swing in, deal that damage, and then everybody sacrifices everything. We manifest the top cards of our library, and then we have a board state and they don't. Moving on to card advantage, we have Trading Post. This card's pretty solid. It does a lot of the things the deck wants to do. It'll sacrifice our commander, it'll bring artifacts back from the graveyard, and it will draw us cards. The One Ring, turns out this is just stupid amazing in the deck. It's solid card advantage and colorless while giving you protection, right? Another thing we can do in the deck, if we have something that brings artifacts back from our graveyard and a way to sacrifice artifacts, which we do, we can just cast this every turn, giving us protection from everything every turn consistently. Skull Clamp, this is going to be amazing because we are sacrificing a lot of creatures in this deck, and then drawing 2 cards whenever we do that is amazing. Mind's Eye. Turns out, when you're looking for a colorless card draw, this is one of the best. I've played it a few times, and it's a lot better than people say it is. Canoptic Spider, super solid. We run a lot of artifact creatures, so now we're drawing cards whenever we cast a creature spell in colorless. Kind of sounds crazy. Karn, Scion of Urza, this gives us the option to draw a couple cards, which again in colorless you gotta take what you got, and then Reckoner, Bankbuster, another solid way to get card advantage, and then we can just get a treasure token in a pilot whenever we remove all those counters. It is also kind of easy to keep the counters on there because we do have that proliferation in the deck. Let's take a look at the ramp. We have Treasure Map. This is a super solid early game card. It's going to make sure you're getting into your lands, drawing what you need to draw, and keep those big high costed creatures at the the bottom of your library. And then it'll even flip into a land that lets you draw cards, and colorless. You have to love it. Sword of the Animist, a super solid way to just throw lands onto the battlefield. Sword of Forge and Frontier, I like this one because it is card advantage while also letting you play 2 additional lands. Expedition map, we do run the Urza lands and a ton of utility lands, so grabbing Karn's Bastion with this or just something that'll enable us to sacrifice our commander can be super impactful with this card. Solemn Simulacrum, a staple. He's going to come in, he's going to get us a land, and then he's going to die and draw us a card. Ramp that replaces itself. You gotta love it. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for the deck tech. If you stayed this long, you're an absolute legend. Let me know what you think about the deck tech down below. Remember, you can support me and suggest deck techs on Patreon. And as always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors.